and welcome to the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart, and today my guest is Dr. Lendra James. Welcome, Lendra.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Rosa. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to be here too. You are so inspirational, and I can't wait for you to share your story with the world. You already do on your own podcast. Do you want to say a word about that real quick?
Sure. So I am the host of Nurses with Voices. With Voices is about inspiration, education, and empowerment of nurses from all walks of life. Whether you're a bedside nurse, whether you're a clinician, whether you're a healthcare leader, it's really to give empowerment to the nurses and throughout, right?
Yeah, and I love the emphasis on business. I saw there was an interesting looking episode on real estate for nurses, and we don't really learn much about business in nursing school. So thank you so much for connecting those dots for people who are looking into entrepreneurship. Can you tell us about when you became a nurse and what that journey's been like for you going from being a nurse to entrepreneurship?
Sure. So I've been a nurse now for over about 22 years now, actually. And, I started as an ADN, as an associate degree nurse, and
Me
I
too.
worked my way up. You too, right? So
Mhm.
I worked my way up. I received my bachelor's degree. I actually worked all across the country and decided to go back after being a single parent. I went back for my bachelor's degree with an intention at this point. It took me years to go back for my bachelor's degree, actually, because I was working as a nurse. I was working all across the country. I did travel nursing. And so I did finally go back for my BSN. And once I did that, I said I was going to go on and I was either going to get my PhD or my doctorate, which I did eventually receive my
Yay!
doctorate degree. Yes, I am a
Congratulations.
pandemic degree, doctorate degree.
Oh,
Yeah, so like I said, after working across the country, I worked my way up through nursing leadership, achieved my nurse exec board certification, and ultimately my doctor of nursing practice degree. And, you know, l- I am, I'm so, my journey into healthcare entrepreneurship it was a little more than me just wanting to be a business owner. I actually, as I entered into healthcare leadership, I actually experienced quite a bit of bias, and which led to burnout. And it, it got me to a place where I needed to take a step back from nursing because I almost thought that that was the end of my career as a nurse. And deep down, I knew that there was so much more that I had to offer to a community. And I actually built my business. I started building my business. My business is DL James Consulting. And I actually own a wellness business as well. So I actually have a multifaceted business. And it was during that time is when I started to get that pulse back, I like to say. You have PEA.
mhm.
It
Yeah.
was when I started to really get that spark back for nursing, and I knew that I had a message that I wanted to send, and my business allowed me to get a message across my way, not for anyone else, not to complete the agenda for any organization, but for my organization. So it really gave my spark back, and by doing so, I built my consulting business where I help other nurses start their own consulting businesses as well. And during that journey, I really had to prioritize myself, right? With dealing with the burnout. And I had to pray because I had gotten to a point where I didn't really recognize me. And I wanted to be able to, because I came through this, I wanted to be able to help other nurses be able to escape this as well. And I said, there has to be more. You're not alone, right? When you go through certain journeys, and by building my business, and I started to meet other nurses who were in business, and I started to meet other nurses who had also experienced burnout, and I knew that there was something there.
Yeah,
So,
and you weren't giving up being a nurse. You
no.
just needed to be a nurse in a way that wasn't gonna take you out.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was able to do with my business. I've been able to do that with my wellness business. I have a wellness business. We offer IV hydration therapy. We have a weight management program. We offer post-op concierge services. And I just enjoy being able to have other nurses be able to hire them and show them a different light in
Yeah.
nursing, and from the wellness side, and then from my consulting side as well, being able to mentor and coach other nurses into starting their own consulting business so that ultimately they can also get out their message their way as well.
Yeah.
So my mission is I empower nurses to break through from burnout and build generational wealth. And I do that through coaches and mentorship and courses, I'm sorry, and mentorship.
That is so beautiful. I mean, we all heard that nurses eat their young, but you're really going to the side of nurses feed their young. Let's
Right.
duplicate this and disciple them into another healthy lifestyle that they can lead, and not seeing other nurses as competition, but collaborating with other nurses so we can all rise together, right?
Right, right. And that's what it's about. It's really about building us up as a community from from the nurses standpoint, from bedside nurses to healthcare leaders to healthcare executive leaders, right? And I wrote about this in my book. So I did author a book, Confessions of a Nurse Executive, and I did author a book, and I wrote about this in the book and my book was about inspiring other nurses to be able to really look back because we all have a story. Like as nurses, we
Yeah.
all have a story. And you know what? Some stories are, can be highlighted more than others. However, we all have a story. And if we really take a look at healthcare right now, in the last few years since COVID, healthcare has taken a bit of a nosedive, and there's been an uptick in healthcare worker burnout. And there has to be a guiding light, right? And there has to be forces to help healthcare workers. And trust me, healthcare leaders, they need it as well. Healthcare leaders, they need support. And sometimes they just don't know how. And that's where consulting businesses like mine come in, where we can go into organizations and help you infuse wellness into your organization, or infuse wellness and empowerment into your healthcare leaders. Because a lot of times they just don't know where to start. Things can get so bad that they don't know where to start. And
Right.
that's the
Like
beauty
we
of
all
being a
know
business.
we should have a good diet and exercise to be healthy. But then when the rubber meets the road, it's like, well, what can I practically even fit into my life that would make it tangibly better? And so it sounds like you're really engaging with people to give them practical hands-on strategies of this is how, this is your plan, and like make it applicable to their life. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, that's exactly it. So that is exactly it. So is a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is mindset and just really knowing the actionable steps and strategies that you need to take, right? In order to be a better version of you, in order for you to be a better version of the nurse that you want to be. Sometimes people want to elevate. Now because we need nurses at the bedside. And a
Yeah.
lot of times they want to transition to different healthcare areas, or they want to transition to leadership, and they don't know how. And they need that support and that guidance as to how to navigate the healthcare system so that they can reach that different level of healthcare and nursing.
Yeah,
Or a
they
lot of
may not
times you
see a
have,
clear path, right? In their
yeah,
organization.
you need a clear path. And it's about sometimes it's just about having that roadmap to that
Mhm.
path, right? Whether it's you wanting to take your nurse exec board certification, right? Or whether you want to take any certification. Sometimes we're not empowered to do that. And we need to really be around like-minded people who are thinking the same way that we are. So, and when I say we are, you want to get away from the nurses who eat their young,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And we
definitely.
really have to start building up our community of nurses. We really do. And it starts from being in environments that are healthy. You want to be in a very healthy environment, and being in an environment where you can thrive, right? Like that's what nurses want. They want to be able to thrive. They want proper compensation. They want to be able to thrive. They want to feel empowered. And how they do that, a lot of times it starts with the leadership. So if you're a great leader, you're going to have a great tribe of nurses who are going to follow you. And it starts from executive leadership down. It's actually, it goes both ways, right? Because as a nurse, we have to be engaged And we have to want more for our patients, for ourselves. And then as executive leaders, we have to want more, not just for our organization and from the financial aspect, we have to want more for our workforce because our workforce are the ones who are proven to be so resilient.
Yeah, definitely. So you have a broad spectrum of experience, and you've seen so much in different facets and sides of healthcare. I want to pose you with a $1 billion question, and I'm really curious to hear about your answer. So, Lendra, if based on your experience, you were given the responsibility of distributing a grant for $1 billion to strategically make healthcare better, how would you like to see that used to make an impact and meet the needs that you've seen?
That's a great question. So for me, I would like to see it used to one, compensate nurses properly. That's number one. And why I say that is because when you look at the healthcare alignment, right? When you look at the triad, you maybe say, you have you have nurses, you have nurse leaders, you have providers, and you have physicians, right? And there's definitely a huge scale difference in the pay scale, right? And a lot of times when you talk about nurses, when you see nurses going on strike, they're striking for staffing, or that's a whole conversation within itself, or they're striking for compensation or fair wages. And when you have to ask yourself, why aren't nurses paid comparable to what residents and physicians are making? Why aren't they making that much? Because just like when we had COVID, we were all on the front line, right? We were nurses, physicians, we were all there. And so when you really start to break things down, we want to have fair compensation. And not only will compensation, I know they say money can't really change everything, but it can make nurses feel a little more valued. Because I actually did a survey and they asked nurses about what makes them feel, what are the causes of the dissatisfaction? Is it bias? Is it burnout? Is it undervalue? Is it underpay? And underpay is definitely has been one of them. I would also want to use those funds to infuse wellness into organizations, and wellness from the top down. And what I mean is wellness for your leaders, wellness for your healthcare workers, because this will bring that appreciation. This should be something that should be across the board when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to what we do. Think about companies like, Google and what they do for their employees. Why don't we have the same thing in healthcare? So my mission with that, with those funds would be to have organizations be able to flood their organization and make the standard with wellness into the organization, and wellness for the mind, body, and the soul, right? So that, because that's where a lot of things happen. When you have happy employees, you're going to have happy clients, you're going to have happy patients. And that's where we really need to start shifting so that we can have those thriving, productive individuals in the healthcare community.
Like they say in the family, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? You got to make sure you got some happy nurses. And I loved working in with other nurses. Like the camaraderie was incredible. And I know so many nurses who, you could not pay them enough to make them care as much as they do. And I met one nurse the other day who has been doing this a long time, and she is financially independent enough through other streams of income that she doesn't have to work as a nurse. She does it because it's her calling. And how many nurses have come out of retirement not because they didn't want to like be a greeter at Walmart and they're like, I'll just go back to nursing, but it's because that's what gave them meaning, right? We just need to be empowered to do what we're called to do.
Right.
And
Right.
so I would like to explore your ideas some more and kind of tease out like how practically, if you had that amount of money, how could that money be used to increase the wages of nurses and bring them up to an acceptable standard as you were describing?
So you see a lot of nurses working until they're 65 or 70 even, right? And sometimes they can't retire. And I know in my experience, I worked across the country, and sometimes they can't retire just economically. They can't retire. Now, they've just worked 30 or 40 years, right? And they still can't retire. And to your point, you made a great point. Do have nurses who they have side jobs, right? And that actually is one of the things that lead to the burnout, because I have a side job as a nurse because I'm trying to bring in extra income. So it's twofold, right? You have your nurses who, and you have, there's thousands of nurses who, and I mean, I think most of us, we get into this profession not for the money. We get into the profession because it's a calling, right? Now, when I talk about the compensation and how it should be dispersed, this should be this should be a salary that we make just as much as providers, because we do just as much when we talk about the compensation. And this should be a nurse's salary when you look at, and I'm just putting a number out there, the nurses in California. Nurses in California can make about 140,000 a year, right? And yes, the cost of living is much more. The cost of living is so much more there. However, when you look at physician salaries in California, look at what they're making. So I say this to say, nurses in Mississippi or nurses in Alabama or nurses in states like Georgia, they're not making anywhere near 140,000. They're doing just as much work as the nurses in California. So
Well, were
why
you
can't
saying that the physicians are making closer to the salary of nurses in California, or are you saying there's still that huge pay like
there's still right,
differential?
there's still a huge gap. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is the nurses in California, they can make, and I'm putting like at least an average number out there, they can make about 140,000 a year. And the nurses in, like I said, states like Georgia, they may make 70,000 a year, right? So there's a huge disparity depending on where you are. There's a huge disparity as to what they can make as far as compensation. So there needs to be a playing field that's pretty level. Why can't nurses make a salary where they don't have to go out and have side jobs that are going to now add to their burnout because they need to? Why can't nurses retire and have those funds, right? Just like when you look at the VA hospital, you can retire and then you have a good retirement plan. So these are things that we need to talk about at the legislative level. And this is something that grant could do. If we're talking about having a grant, there should be a funding for nursing so that nurses are not working until they're 70 years old and they have to still go out and get a part-time job, and not because they want to, because they have to.
Yeah.
So
So
that's where.
I think you hit on a point here as well, to kind of in that, well, nurses don't always have the wisdom or the training to choose retirement plans that will be effective for them. And like, I am thankfully and also unthankfully nowhere near retirement. But we did the Dave Ramsey plan when my husband and I got married, and we made it a priority to start our own like retirement funds and not only be dependent on any kind of pension plan. Like my husband's a teacher and he has a pension plan. But even those, even like state funded pension plans may not be reliable, right? Or Social Security may not be reliable for us and those younger than us. Like we don't know. So it's going to be important for us to invest our own money for retirement. My employer has done a matching amount for my Roth IRA, which I'm very grateful for. But I know so many of my coworkers that don't participate in that. They don't even have any idea of what they're missing out on. So I'm really thankful for nurses like you who are activating the conversation around finances and how to responsibly plan for your own finances. And so, I don't know, maybe there should be like a nursing retirement fund. Use the $1 billion to create a nursing pension fund or something. What do you think?
And that's my point, is having that fund for nurses. And to your point, and I love that you bring up, we're not we're not really educated on our pension plans, right?
Mhm.
We go and so we get jobs, we're hired, and we sign up for our 401ks because that's what traditionally we've been told to do. We've been told you work until for your 30 years or your 40 years, however long it is now, and you draw from your pension. And no one teaches us about the business side of healthcare or about business, period, when it comes to nursing. No one's really teaching us about business. No one's teaching us about making investments.
Well, and they can make it available. I will say my employer makes that education available every year, but I think, you know, the people providing it, they don't want to be pushy. They're not selling anything. And
Right,
so if you're in the
right,
midst of your workday or whatever, you're like, I don't have time to add a totally foreign language subject of finances when I got to get back to the bedside or
right,
I got to get back to this task I was doing, right? So I think it would also be important to prioritize that in training nurses so that they can be more financially stable, and that let's work it into orientation. Like, guess what? We want you to be a long-term nursing employee at this organization. So we're going to invest in making sure you know how your money can best benefit you. You don't have to invest in this work sponsored uh, plan, hypothetically. But if you do, these are the options. This is what they mean. And this is why these are more beneficial than others, right? Just
right.
basics when you're required to be there and you're not trying to run off to the next thing.
Right, right, right. So earlier this year, we hosted what was called the Health and Wealth Expo. It was a virtual summit that we hosted, and we talked about healthcare, and we talked about the healthcare industry. We talked about mental health and nursing. We talked about financial literacy. We had someone come and talk about personal credit and business credit. We had an
Oh,
attorney
nice.
talking about healthcare law. And the financial aspects were so interesting because, and this is why it's so important for us as healthcare workers to be very literate about what's happening to our funds and our investments, because there's so much more that we can do with our money and not just our 401k.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can take your money, there are Roth IRAs, there's IULs, there's different things that you can do with your money other than your 401k. And this is where getting into conferences and having those financial advisors are so important. And to your point, yes, organizations, they will make it available. You do have, you can, you know, make a phone call, you can during open enrollment, they will explain those things to you. But do we understand it? Right? So
Right.
do you actually understand it, as opposed to having a financial advisor and talking to you about life insurance, right? And how you can take from your life insurance and how you can build generational wealth and how you can build trust with your life insurance. So that's
Well,
taking it a step further with that understanding of your finances. And this is how we as nurses, this is how we start to build generational wealth.
well, and like your episode on real estate, right? It doesn't have to be for later. It can be like an income while you're also building equity in a real estate property. Or just let me drop this hint again. If you find out if your employer matches your retirement, and even if you don't want to invest all your retirement money in there, at least invest as much as they will match, and then make sure you leave it there until you can take it with you. Like, I think some places it's like a minimum of 3 years, because I mean, every year they put in more than I do into my retirement account. And so I'm just really want to make sure people know that that is a potential option. You should find out if you can have access to that. But thank you so much for taking the time to educate us about that. And I am so thankful, Lendra, to know you now. I'm so jealous of like those people that got to go to your expo and learn so much, and I missed it. Will you be doing it again?
I will actually. So I'll be doing actually an in-person. So it was so successful that people asked me to do it. I love to do virtual.
Mhm.
I just do, because you can reach so many people. You know, we had
Mhm.
people attend from Texas, we had people attend from like all over. So you can reach so many people, Georgia,
Mhm.
California. But we're actually going to be doing an in-person expo October 24th, and that's going to be at the National Harbor.
Okay.
So we will be planning another virtual expo. We're going to do an in-person expo in October, and then subsequently we'll do another virtual one. It's become now it's going to be an annual thing, if not biannual.
Well, it sounds like a wealth of knowledge. So, I mean, if I can't come this year, I hope to go in the future. So, where can people find out more information about that?
Health and Wealth Expo, you can go to Health and Wealth Summit 2024.com, and that's the website that we'll be using, and we'll be updating that website for the in-person expo in October as well. But you can look at the Health and Wealth Summit 2024.com and see all of the information from the previous expo.
And can you share your website with us?
Absolutely. So, and my website is dljamesconsulting.com. And you can go on there and, you can see the services that we offer and just really take a look, and you'll see exactly what we do as an organization. And you can contact us if you'd like to book a strategy call. You can do that right from the website as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Lendra James. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I look
Thank
forward to
you.
talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Same here, Rosa.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast, subscribe wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, and make sure you give us a like. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you liked or what you'd like to hear more about. And I'll be interviewing more healthcare stakeholders to get their ideas, as I'm looking for more possibility thinkers to address the issues in healthcare so we can find solutions and not just complain about problems. So I'll see you in the next episode.